and this is in chapters 3.6 and 5.1 from Git. We do want to talk about some strategies for maintaining repositories, or how you work together in repositories, give you some workflows. Hopefully this will. Okay, so I have a story out there called OSS story. And if we come in, you guys should be able to clone it as well. We'll kind of run this. You guys should have your tables. If you have your tables set up, follow along. If not, make sure you can kind of, I know that not everybody probably has everything installed right now, but I have a repository out there called OSS story. It's really kind of a simple little thing. It's just to give you guys some room to work with stuff. It's right here. It's a test repository. It says it's a test repository for 49XX, which was what this used to be called. We can go through and kind of make this work as we go. I'm going to clone the repository. You can see that we have OS open source software story. We come into here. We'll make dir spring 2021. Okay. So we have groups. We have 9 groups here. So well, let's see what we can get done here. We'll at least give you guys something to think about as we're kind of walking along. All right. I am going to quickly we actually want something here, because if you push, right, if we do a git status, an empty directory just doesn't count. So we're just going to cat placeholder into readme.md. That's what happens when you get stuck in Python for too long on a Mac. All right, so that's just a placeholder. Git add dot once we have a file there, then when you guys clone it, it'll actually come that directory will actually be there. If we didn't have a placeholder there, if we didn't have a file down in that directory, we wouldn't see that directory when we when you cloned. Okay, so now if we do a refresh here, we should be able to see that directory. And I actually have to be on the window instead of on the projection of the window. Okay, and now we have spring 2021. We come in here, and there's our README with the placeholder in it. All right, so that's just a little housekeeping for that. Let's come back to our introduction. You guys can go in if you want to clone this. You're welcome to. I think it'd be a good idea if we can get the tables kind of working together on this. So hopefully each of you are in a little bit of a group. Pretty Git branch graphs. Okay, so if you're having problems with Git installed in WSL, what I ended up having to do was I had to install a piece of software. So remember we were talking about X Windows as a community, X11 as a community that was building open source software. That's true. And Linux uses, essentially underneath the covers, uses X11 to manage all of its window management. So what we have to do for Ubuntu is we need to install X11, an X11 client on that. I installed Xming, Xming. And we can talk about this during lab on Friday. And then you have to do something like export in your Ubuntu window, export display equals, I think that'll work. I would, right? If you do that, then it looks like GITK will work. Now, if that doesn't work, then it's because your Qt libraries are newer than the core of the X Windows thing or something like that. I gotta go back and get myself refreshed. But we can fix that too. Just let me know if, like I said, on Friday we'll kind of walk through that, and we can get it working because it just worked for me. But I did have to muck around with it a little bit. There's a couple of steps that aren't in the install instructions for WSL because I have never used WSL before a week ago. All right. We're inside the directory. See your remote repositories. What we have set up right now is a shared repository. So what that means is we have a repository. It's public. I would probably have to check whether GitHub actually allows me to have a completely public repository where everybody can just push in. We may have to actually set this up. But if you're collaborators, right? If you're a blessed or a known developer on the project, we have one shared repository, and everybody just pounds into that repository with any of their changes. And this is a truly shared repository, a true collaboration of peers, right? Every developer has the same rights, and every developer can willy-nilly overwrite anybody else's changes, and dogs and cats living together, and all sorts of other potential confusion and mayhem. But that's okay. I mean, that's, there's nothing wrong with a little chaos. So if you have a small team and you're all working together as collaborators, this is kind of a shared repository type of organization. One repository, everybody checks their commits into the same repository. Hopefully they're using a little bit of branching so that they don't clobber each other as continuously. Keeps things sorted out a little bit better. But, there's one repository, one remote repository, a bunch of local repositories, right? Every developer, after you do a clone, has their own local copy, and people push from and pull and fetch from, push to and fetch from the shared repository to get updates to their code. To really set this up, we need to go into GitHub and we need to set up collaborators. I'm not going to set up, 40 or 60 of you or something like that. But that's okay. We'll just go with this for now. But you can go in, and if you go into, OSS story, I can come in here and hit settings and go into collaborators, manage access. They changed it. And I can invite as many collaborators as we want into this, right? And you can all, at that point, just push back into the repository. It's nice. It's a nice, clean way of working. There's not a lot of overhead. And if you're the 2 or 3 founders of the repository and you're talking often enough, or at least discording, this can actually work. But the problem is that we want our communities to grow. And as our communities grow, we're going to have people with different skill sets and different levels of skills. And we're going to have somebody responsible for maintaining the overall repository. So as you grow and as you get bigger, more collaborators, different skill sets, different focuses, what you need to do is you need to start thinking about other configurations. So here's the other one, right? The centralized workflow is simple, easy to set up. All you have to do is define a couple of collaborators. They call this an integration manager workflow. There's a link here to distributed manager workflows. Actually, there's a link here to shared repository workflows as well. The idea here is that you have one person in charge, or a team, bureaucracy in charge of managing what code actually makes it into the blessed repository. The blessed repository is the source of all truth. That is, your current the repository that everybody needs to refer to when they want to make sure they're on the stable single source of the code. Okay, and what you'll see is that all the private developers, and including the integration manager, can pull the code from the blessed repository. So they can always pull the code down from the blessed repository to get the current state of what is considered, accepted into the code base. When they want to push, what they do is they maintain their own public repository, right? So they pull down from the blessed repository. They have this is a copy, their own personal copy of the blessed repository. In GitHub, this is called a fork, and it's very easy to fork, and you can do it either by cloning the blessed repository and then pushing, kind of like we did when we created our new repository, or in GitHub, it's now just a single button click, and you can fork a repository and then pull that down onto your private development. But the key is that this starts out as a copy of the blessed repository, but as the developer does their development, they put their changes into their own personal copy of the repository, their own developer copy of the repository, their own fork, their own public. And once they've gotten to a point where they believe they've solved a problem, or where they believe their code is ready to be brought into the blessed repository, what they do is they submit a pull request, and the integration manager or managers, the community at large, takes a look at the pull request. And then once it's approved, the integration manager or manager is the single group, or the small set of people that can push into the blessed repository. And they push it into the blessed repository, and then everybody else pulls it from there to update their base to the new norm, the new frontline code. Okay, so this is what if you're going to be working on a large project or a mature project, something that's been around for a while, you're probably going to want to do this, or you're probably going to be required to do this if you're working with somebody else. But there's something really useful about the centralized workflow, where all you really have to do is have some named collaborators who you want to work with. All right, so how would we set up something like this? Well, we've already looked at our, I don't remember what workflow we're going to set up. If you've pulled down the OSS story, right? So hopefully, it's hard for me to get feedback here. What time is it? We've got about 8 minutes. I think what we're going to do is I think I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here, and then we're going to buy the lab. The lab's going to be on Git. Okay? This is not going to get done in 10 minutes, probably. We could probably get through the first half. But I would really like this to be kind of a little bit of a team effort. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the lecture. I'm going to give you 5 minutes of your life back, or 8 minutes. 8 minutes. Wow. I have never stopped. 7 minutes. That's better. Never stopped 8 minutes early. We're going to take the start of the lab to go through this. We'll set up a couple of workflows with you. We'll kind of walk through it. And then we'll go on with the lab. This shouldn't take too long. And it actually is a good lead-in to the Git lab. All right, so I will cut this short. I'll answer any questions. Anybody have a question? You know what? I just realized I'm not sure if I was looking at my questions in a different window, and I'm just seeing that there aren't any way to see hands raised. So I apologize. If you guys ever have questions that you need to raise your hand, I can't see them from the place I was presenting from. I can't see them from my monitor station. So any questions, anything? If not, we'll see you guys in 3 days. And remember, if you are one of the people who is has a time, you're 12 hours off or something like that, please fill out this survey, and we'll kind of take a look at that. A meeting with the TAs and mentors in a few minutes.